There's a big difference between sandcastles we built as kids and the ones used by professional sandcastle builders. So pack your sunscreen and grab your pail and shovel. Here are the top 15 most impressive sandcastles ever made. Number 15. Harry Potter Sandcastle. Looking at this one, you might find it hard to believe that this was made by a muggle. We're talking about a sandcastle that's so good it looks as though it was built by magic. Part of the reason for that is how big this thing is. As you can see from the photos, it towers over the people who are visiting it and has a level of detail and creativity that you won't see in many other sandcastles. Eagle-eyed Potterheads will notice that the castle itself is designed to resemble Hogwarts, while the faces of some of the series' most well-known and well-loved characters look out from the walls. It was built by an unknown artist as part of China's 2011 Changsha International Sand Sculpture Art Festival. It's such a stunning piece of work that you won't forget this one unless someone casts an Obliviate charm on you. And you'll want to walk right up to it and shout Aloha Mora, so you can walk right inside. Number 14. White Sand Castle. There's not much I can say about this one that you can't see from taking a look at it. It's an incredibly detailed design that seems to almost defy gravity. Sculpted entirely from clean white sand, this creation features a couple of dozen arches and some intricate windows carved into the castle's walls. It looks like a cross between King's Landing and an M.C. Escher painting. Unfortunately, not too much is known about who created this beauty or what it was made for, but that doesn't mean we can't appreciate that beauty. One of the interesting things about sandcastle builds is that the artists generally aren't doing it for fame or glory. They're doing it instead because they love what they do. And I'm pretty happy about that, because it means we get to see stunning sandcastles like this fortress of white sand, and it looks great in the shadows too. Number 13. Colorful Sandcastle. This is another one of those sandcastles when not a huge amount is known about who made it or where they made it. I guess we can have a pretty good guess at why they made it though. It's because it looks freaking awesome. As you can see from just taking a look at it, the most impressive thing about this one is that it uses a range of different colors. I'm not sure how the creator pulled this off, but we're guessing that it's similar to the way that colored glass is made. But sandcastles are different. For a start, they're much less durable, and it's not as though glass itself is known for being able to take a beating. This colorful sandcastle looks as beautiful as any stained glass window, but it would also wash away into nothing with a heavy rain or a few waves from the sea. Still, I think it's beautiful enough that it was worth the effort, and it's more than deserving of a spot on this list. Number 12. Stairway to Heaven. There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold, and she's buying a stairway to heaven. Weirdly, this is the second video that we've made recently that contains a reference to the iconic Led Zeppelin song. The last one was a stunning sculpture, and you could argue that this is the same, but that it just uses a different raw material. True, this sandcastle doesn't quite stretch all of the way up to the heavens, but it's definitely off to a good start. It's one of the taller sandcastles on this list, and it features a bunch of impressive design features and walkways that puts us in mind of the Battle of Helm's Deep in The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. I'm not quite sure where this one was made, but we're guessing from the background of the photo that it was at some sort of competition. Either that or today's kids are getting insanely good at building sandcastles, because the ones we can see behind it aren't bad either. Number 11. Indian-style sandcastle. To tell you the truth, I wasn't quite sure what to call this one, but there's something about the way it's built that reminds me of the Taj Mahal. I'll talk about that a little more later on. But perhaps it makes more sense to call this one Indian-inspired, because it actually uses architectural elements from all over the world. Talking about architecture when we're talking about sandcastles seems a little bit strange, but one look at this photo is all it takes to see that, in this case at least, it is justified. I love the domes and the details on the windows, and I also like the way that the front door is half open, as though it's just waiting for you to walk inside. The only problem is if that you tried to do that, you'd quickly destroy the place, and it's far too beautiful for that. Instead, I hope this sandcastle was left to stand for as long as it could, although I doubt that it's still there now. Number 10. Drip Sandcastle. This sandcastle would be worth a mention for the castle alone, which is a pretty impressive creation that looks out of place set to the backdrop of a calm blue sea and sunbathers with their towels and parasols. But it's the drip-style enhancements on the hill of sand that particularly caught my eye, especially because I'm not quite sure how they made them. I guess that they were assembled separately and then moved once they were ready. Like some of the others that we've taken a look at today, I was impressed by the attention to detail, especially when it comes to the windows, which are surprisingly difficult to do. Those spires at the top are particularly impressive because they've managed to hold their structure while simultaneously having windows carved into the sand. Overall, this sandcastle shows a remarkable amount of creativity and dedication to the craft, and I'd argue that it looks even cooler because it's not competing with any other castles in the background, as you often see when they're built as part of competitions. Number 9. Castle Sandcastle. This sandcastle is perhaps the one on this list that looks the most like an actual castle. One reason for that is the design itself, which typifies the popular castle design in which concentric walls serve to provide fortresses within a fortress. The other way is that the way the builder has spent so much time on the brickwork, which I guess took about as long as the castle build itself. Whether seen from close up or far away, it adds a layer of realism to the build that makes it look like the real deal. I also like the way that the creator of this castle has done such a good job of smoothing out the sand, which is in stark contrast to how rough and lumpy it looks on the backdrop. There's also something about this one that makes it look cozy, or at least as cozy as a sandcastle can ever look. All in all, this is probably one of the best castles on the list when it comes to replicating the real thing, but I've got plenty of more creative ones to take a look at later on in the video. Number 8. Barcelona Sandcastle. I've called this one the Barcelona Sandcastle because it's one of the few builds where we know exactly where it was built, although I don't know who built it or why. Based on the way it looks, though, you might have been able to guess the country of origin, and at the very least you'd be able to tell that it was Spanish-inspired. There's also something religious about this one, feeling like a huge cathedral as opposed to a true castle. Yet again, it's the attention to detail that really shines here. Some of those spires look as though they ought to collapse under the weight of gravity, and it's almost got me wondering whether the artist used something more adhesive than water to hold the thing together. But even in the unlikely event that they used super glue, we still think it's more than worthy of a place on this list. There's no way for us to know enough about the construction of these castles to do anything other than to just enjoy the final product. Number 7. Virginia Beach Sandcastle. This incredible sandcastle was built on Virginia Beach in the United States, and while the castle itself is pretty cool, it's the sculpture that's built around it that really catches the eye. Depicting what I can only guess is some sort of samurai, the impressive thing here is that the castle pales almost into insignificance beside the warrior that's holding it in his lap. This is one of those castles where if you attacked it, the boiling tar and the flying arrows would be the least of your worries. I really like the guy's hands and feet because it's notoriously difficult for artists to replicate human limbs and appendages. I can only imagine that it's even more difficult to do it with sand, even granted that they're a little stylized. I'm not quite sure what that wheel is for, though. You'll also notice that the skies in the background don't look particularly appealing here. I can't tell whether that's just the weather or whether the photo has been through a filter. Either way, the castle more than makes up for the lack of sunshine. Number 6. Dragon Sandcastle. Alright, let's take things back to Harry Potter for a second. Did you know that the Hogwarts motto, Draco dormens nunquam titilandus, translates from Latin into English as never tickle a sleeping dragon? This impressive sand dragon isn't quite asleep, but he's not far off either. Still, you're going to have to get rounded if you want to pay a visit to this stunning sandcastle design, which also seems to be guarded by a couple of warriors. This is another one where the attention to detail is very impressive, and I imagine that the bushes were particularly difficult to get right. It's just a shame that the effect is diminished by the advert for HomeNet. Still, it doesn't spoil the overall effect completely, and the only thing that I can really complain about is that the photos aren't of a higher resolution. I'd love to be able to zoom in and take a closer look at this thing. Number 5. Illuminated Sandcastle. I mean, you only need to take one look at this to see how cool it is. For a start, there's the sandcastle itself, which is much more fluid than the other designs and makes use of a bunch of curving walls. That alone makes it an interesting challenge for its designer, because it must have been hard to build out the structure without it collapsing. The whole aesthetic is then taken to the next level thanks to its illumination, which takes on the format of a half-dozen tiny candles. During the daytime, that would be pointless, but you can see from this photo how effective it becomes when it's dusk. The result is one of the more interesting designs on this list, and one that challenges our preconceived ideas of what a sandcastle has to look like. Kudos to its creator, whoever that might be. Number 4. Taj Mahal Sandcastle. I mentioned the Taj Mahal earlier, but I couldn't call that a Taj Mahal sandcastle when there's this one on our list, which is a recreation of the iconic palace as opposed to just a design that's inspired by it. The crazy thing here is that it's actually one of the easier designs to pull off, at least on this list. That's because they had a visual of the actual Taj Mahal to work from, and some of the elements like the rounded tops are relatively easy to build. Still, there's a hell of a lot of attention to detail here, at least where it matters. It seems also a little strange that they carved out such stunning brickwork and windows, and then just forgot to use a closing quote mark for the phrase "picture of love." All in all, though, it's pretty clear from just a quick glance that this is a hell of a build, which is why it ranks so high on this list. Number 3. Winnie the Pooh Sandcastle. If you have young children, then you're gonna love this one, unless they're so Winnie the Pooh mad that you're sick of it and you don't ever want to think about it again. This design is so noteworthy because, as well as being a great example of a well-built sandcastle, it also depicts Pooh, Tigger, and Piglet, 3 of the most well-known and well-loved characters from that series, which was created by children's author A.A. Milne. One of the cool things about this one is that the photo that we can see shows people walking past it from behind, and that can help us get a little perspective. It's not clear just how big this sandcastle is, but I certainly can tell it's one of the biggest on this list. Of course, there's also the fact that the sandcastles are intrinsically linked to childhood, and so we love the idea of a design that incorporates some of the most beloved characters in children's books and TV. Number 2. Torchlit Sandcastle. Alright, this is the second sandcastle on our list to be lit up with artificial light, but while the first one just uses candles, this one takes things a step further by using torches. You can almost imagine Indiana Jones grabbing one of them before heading into some long-forgotten temple. Honestly, I have to say that design-wise, the Illuminated Sandcastle at number 5 is a little more impressive, though they're both great castles. But when it comes to the overall effect, it's hard to top this one. Not too much is known about who built this one or where they built it, but that's pretty standard for a list like this. I love the conical towers, and I'm really impressed by the windows, which are fairly rudimentary in design but look amazing thanks to the interior torches that spill light through them. Overall, you're unlikely to find a cooler-looking illuminated sandcastle, and it's surprisingly difficult to build interior torches into the design. Not only do you need to light them and place them before you finish building, but also you need to make sure that they have access to enough oxygen to keep on burning. Number 1. The world's tallest sandcastle. Alright, the pick for number 1 was easy, even with so many other incredible designs on the short list. As the title suggests, it earned its place by being the tallest sandcastle that the world has ever seen. A certified Guinness World Record holder, this incredible sandcastle uses over 1,800 tons of sand and took 2 weeks to build. That's an achievement in and of itself, considering how vulnerable sandcastles can be when it comes to the elements. We also know quite a lot about this one, thanks to the fact that it's a record holder. It was built as a publicity stunt by Turkish Airlines to celebrate its first service between Miami and Istanbul, and they assembled the castle at Miami's Virginia Key Beach back in October of 2015. A lot of builds that we've looked at today were made by either a single person or a small team. That just wouldn't be possible with a sandcastle like this. The credit for its construction goes to Ted Siebert from the Sand Sculpture Company and his dedicated team of 19 sculptors. The result is something that ticks all of the boxes, from size to attention to detail and overall build quality. I just wish it had a couple of torches in there. Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.